This is the way the slave shackles would work. The chain was unlocked. Once the chain was unlocked, taken apart, very ingenious, very elementary. The hand was put in. Once the hand was put in, locking device would commence. It's just like a puzzle, but very elementary. It's locked in like this. That's one side. This is the locking device. This locking device is the other handcuff. It goes on like this, fits in like this. There's a pin that goes in. This pin slides in like this. Once it's slid in, it's locked. You're then locked in. The whole concept of this is to fix it so the person could not get away. You notice how these are made. If you look at the side here, this is all handmade. And that will show you why there were so many keys that were made to so many different things. If you ever notice, a jailer had 50,000 keys on his side. These keys represented all these locks because they could not find the same key was not always put in the same lock. And by being hand forged and handmade, they're always different. So that was your differences then. These are middle passage shackles. These shackles were used in the middle passage. What would happen is, once they got going up the gangplank, what they would do was take these off. These went off. This bar would go across the front of the leg, around the front. This bar would be put in the back. It would look just like this, with the legs here. After the shackles were put on, remember one thing, because of this metal here, because of the sharpness of the metal, it would actually cut into the skin. And when it would cut into the skin, a lot of times when they would get to land or go down to inspect the slaves, under here you would see maggots. Maggots would be cleaning the wound. But it showed that infection was already there, the maggots were cleaning it, and the bone was actually protruding through on some slaves. When they would get to land, they would try to cover it over with different muds, different creams, different things to cover it over, yet they were already scarred. In order to keep from scarring them, what they did after that, they went to a rolled kind of shackle, which would bruise but wouldn't so much break the skin. They had a rolled shackle. That way they had chains. They could move freer. They could take the slaves out much freer and much faster. Here, in another segment, we have runaway shackles. These were used and put on. Here, in another segment, we have runaway shackles. These were used and put on slaves to know where they were and how they were working. And what they would do was, they would take and open this. Once this was opened, they put it around the leg or whatever it would fit on. Sometimes it fit around the neck to determine how small it was. Then it would be locked on. Once it's locked on, it happens that you'd walk around and it would make this noise. The dogs in turn would hear the stones on the inside or the little seeds that were on the inside, and they would finally track the slave that was running with this. This was a runaway shackle. In turn, the slaves would in their running, they would fill it with mud. When it would try to fill it with mud, it would fix it so the beads wouldn't move around. But after it dried out and turned to dust, they would begin to move around again, and the dog could track it clearly. Another restraint we have here. This particular thing is called a yoke. A limb was cut, it was cleaned, primarily to keep slaves together. What it would do, like this, goes around the neck. When it goes around the neck, around here, wire would be put, so you couldn't get your head out. This was also used as a means of execution. To execute a slave because he was trying to run away, this thing would be used to put the head of a slave here and then smash his head. That's what these things were used for. It's made of wood. It's just a regular branch, but this has been used over the years, and it was sent to us from Africa by one of the chiefs. We're looking at shackles again. We're looking at another kind of restraint and forms of punishment needed out to people and slaves in the Southlands. This particular piece was made by a slave for a slave. And if you can notice, on the inside there's leather. That was so that you would not damage your product or damage the thing that you were using. This particular thing was made for a slave that just came on the farm. It was put on like this. He was shackled in. Once it was on, if he moved, this ball you carried wherever you went. Also, he had another piece of apparatus that he wore around his neck. While this was on, he wore these at the same time. This is a 5 to 6 pound weight. Where the concept of iron balls came from, this is where it would come from. What it would do, it would hit him wherever it needed to in the privates to keep him from running away. This was another way of restraining a people that did not read restraining. They captured people out of their own lands, brought to America, and put in slavery. Again, we have a ball and chain. This is made of pure iron. What it is, it weighs about 50 pounds. This particular item was dug up in a sugar mill. If you notice, this piece is broken off or either cut. Someone either tried to get out of it or they broke their way out of it. But here it is. These are the particular kinds of things they used. Again, we have another restraint here. This particular one came from Africa. This goes around the neck, also around the hands. Around the hands and the neck. This is how it was worn. When it was worn like this, remember that the sharpness of the iron or the metal itself would always cut into the person's neck, or the one or the wearer of this particular apparatus. So they were not careful. They were not careful with whoever they had it on. But one thing about it, the marks around your neck would show, because these heavy items leaning on the collarbones also cut into the collarbones. Again, forms of punishment. This particular one, again, would be put on a slave and hooked to a ball. Only the ball would be bigger. The ball would be 100 pounds. And it would fix it so that the person could not move all night. They usually lock them under the house to fix it so they trained them like dogs so they wouldn't run away at night. Also we have here, we have this particular one. This is a chain that was used to bring the slaves from the market, or slave catchers would catch this. They would hook this around the slave's neck, then hook them to either the back of a horse or the wagon, whichever came first. If the slave catchers would catch you and put this around your neck, they would drag you behind a horse. You would have to hold this. You would have to hold this. In the event that you fell down, remember, you could lose your head. So what you would do was hold onto this tightly. Once you got back to the plantation, you'd be beaten, ears cut off, and things like that. You, in turn, would become a piece of meat to have things sold to teach other slaves not to try to run away.
Whippings were very commonplace. So much so that they actually passed a law that forbid a slave owner from whipping a slave more than 100 times. These whips here are examples of the kind of whips that were used on the plantations. This is a rawhide whip. And while this looks very flexible, they would soak the ends of these tails, as they're called, in brine or salt water. And they would become so hard, they would be like a razor's edge. And when they slashed through the slave's naked back, it would leave these huge marks that these slaves would carry for the rest of their lives. This is a cane that would be used the same way. And when whacked across a slave's back or face or any part of his body, would also leave horrible marks. Women weren't left out of this either. A well-to-do white mistress would get gifts at Christmas time or for her birthday, similar to this item here, a comb and brush set that she would have in her boudoir, with a nice mirror. But I bet you never saw this. This is considered a white mistress's hand whip. She would be given this as a gift. It would be highly polished and have her initials or her name monogrammed on it, attached to a heavy strap. While this strap may look harmless, it's pretty thick, similar to a belt. And trust me, it offers quite a sting.